It's easy to feel like I've failed, or feel like I'm a failure when I don't get to do everything that I wanted to do. And there are so many things that I've wanted and want to do. You know, one of them is making the next part of making the next part of looking at my old art, doing those world building video ideas that I had, doing another Let's Play series like I did for Metroid Prime 4, finishing up that writing. There are so many things. There we go. There you are, Cam. So many things to try and fit in and to try and do. And it's easy to feel like you've just failed when you can't accomplish everything. And I felt like that recently. But I have to remember to show myself some leeway, a little kindness. You know, I really do feel, I get those emotions, I really do feel like I've failed at something for not uploading the video idea that I wanted. Or something that I've been wanting or trying to do for a long time. And especially when it's... Yeah. These darn ants. Hold on a sec. There we go. And especially when it's something I said I wanted to do next. Sometimes energy just kind of comes and goes, you know. But you know, I am starting to feel a lot better. It was a process, right? I was sitting at my computer trying to force things, and then my body told me, like, hey, this is a good time to just, like, pause here, play some video games. And I did. And then it came a point where, okay, you should rest your body. You know, maybe watch something. So I moved things to my room, which is like 5 feet from, you know, the main area where I usually work. And so I did, and you know what? There we go. And you know what? I felt a lot better after doing so. But then came that part where I stayed there a little too long, wondering how long I should rest or how long it should go or things like that. And it got to this point, you know, where it's like I do one thing and then I just want to go sleep, and then I do one other thing and I want to go sleep, and my day is just dominated by me constantly sleeping and not actually doing any of the things that I want to do. And I start to feel like I'm over resting at this point, you know? There's a kindness to allowing yourself to rest, and earlier, before, I was definitely doing that, but I started to feel really guilty for over resting. And so usually what I do when I have a feeling like that is rather than sitting and wallowing in it, I look something up, something like an anchor, something that can help to try and get me a sense of what's going on and help move me a bit forward, because part of me was telling myself, like, okay, you've been in this room for long enough, you've rested, you saw some nice movies and things like that. Now it's time to move yourself back to, the main room. And I was thinking to myself, this conflicting feeling of, well, I need to make sure I take care of myself. And that I'm rested, but then after a while, rest felt pretty sucky, pretty terrible, and then I would just end up going to sleep again. It felt like it was taking away, it was out of balance. So I looked it up, and it started bringing on more thoughts of lots and lots of self-criticism, leading into older feelings of self-hatred and self-deprecation. So I looked it up, and I tried to get something of a grounding perspective, and you know what? I did. And at this exact moment, I'm currently moving my computer and my stuff back from the bedroom back out into the main room. And the moment the energy struck to record one of these journals, as I was doing that, I went ahead and took it. And so, that's this now. But there are all kinds of things I'm still afraid of. Afraid that I'm not interesting enough, or not worth sticking with, and things like that. Hold on, I'm going to vacuum again. Not worth sticking with, or I've got nothing interesting to talk about, or the quality of what I have to talk about is just gone down the pits, things like that. There's only so many ants. They can't keep coming forever. Anyway, that, the quality of things to talk about has gone down, or it's not as interesting, and I get down on myself. I look back on older things I did, talking about Metroid, talking about just random topics, talking about, what else, like the Geese from Dragon Ball, going through my Metroid series, talking about games or shows, that was something that I did back then, during that time. And I'm kind of holding it against myself. Sorry. I was going to look through the playlist, a previous playlist, and I saw a comment on my latest video, though it's probably going to be right before this one. It's interesting. Anywho, yeah. I was going to look through my playlist here. Yeah. I feel like in the past that I talked about a lot more interesting things, or that I had the energy and time for it, and I tend to hold that against myself. But you know what? it's not really worth doing. It's kind of that weird point where I'm comparing me against me, and it's not really turning out well because, the circumstances were different then. The amount of energy or the time I had were different then, or different things were relevant then. When I look back on it, yeah, I was just kind of motivated by the fact that, well, Metroid Prime 4 had just come out at the time, and it made me really energized to go through that, or this channel was just starting, and I was full of energy and pim and vigor to talk about all kinds of stuff, you know. But, some people, like, they kind of want to be one thing, and then they try to do it, and they realize that maybe they're just not cut out for that kind of thing. It's not part of their personality or skill set, and they've kind of got to look for something else, pivot. Look for something else or pivot. And that's definitely, I realize where I'm currently at least, I'm not very much let's play material. I don't have a lot of interesting things to talk about. I don't see myself as being some YouTuber or anything. I'm just, walking around where I live, recording into a phone. But I'm not sure, That's why it's good sometimes, I think, to give things a try. And to try and put things into perspective, I feel like a lot of the times I avoid things because I don't want to be honest with myself or really see that, I'm not cut out for it. But one of the most amazing things is going for it, and that feeling of realizing that it's a direction that you can stop trying to you can stop trying to force yourself to go down. That, it doesn't give you worth. It's not some measure of your validity, whether you succeed at it or not. There's an intrinsic worth. There's an intrinsic worth to yourself that goes beyond just accomplishing these vague tasks and goals and ambitions, and sometimes you go down it and you realize it's just not for you. But at the same time, I think it's another thing I've learned is not just to constantly pick at your negatives or what you can't do, and also look at your strengths, what you can do, what you're very much capable of, or what you learn about yourself as your strengths. Like, for instance, I've learned a lot recently about my strengths when it comes to storytelling or putting a narrative together and things like that. And I've learned about my strengths when it comes to washing windows and cleaning places. I've learned I've learned a lot about my strengths when it comes to designing systems. I've even learned more about my strengths when it comes to drawing or illustration and things like that. I've learned about my strengths when it comes to, well, yeah, designing systems, coming up with systems, but also creating things that are fun for other people, like when I do D&D, coming up with stories, coming up with worlds, imagery, but there are some things that, I wanted to be good at, but I'm just not fantastic at. Another thing, actually, that's another thing. Another thing I discovered is when it came to doing Metroid Prime, that series, I discovered how much I really, really enjoyed putting thumbnails together. And just, it's an extension already of what I like to do, which is, art and illustration and graphic design and even music. Not that the thumbnails that's a separate thing, but, that was something I discovered. So, it's interesting, right? It's like discovering something I'm not particularly great at, but I discovered other parts of it that I found really, really exciting, or that I really enjoyed. And you know what? It's not like I want to give up on doing things that are more YouTube-y, like discussing topics or making lists about things, or more themed things, or looking at old art, or playing through a game. But I realize now that it's probably best if I don't hold it against myself, Not everyone's cut out to do these kinds of things. There's a reason only a few YouTubers, not that I'm one, but just in general, there's a reason why only a few names, last as long as they do. And it's not just anybody with a camera and a voice recorder and sticking videos online that rises, the oil rising to the top of the water. It's definitely not for everybody. But I've decided not to hold it against myself when it comes to that. Or try and use these kinds of things for validation, or to try and give myself some sense of self-worth, Or really even do that with my artwork or music or things like that, I want to come at them from the angle of, I do them because I genuinely just want to do them, and they just feel good to do, and it's just nice to work on these things, and it's fulfilling, but not what I derive personal worth from, I'm thinking about it, Not something to derive validation and worth from, the moment I start using it to justify my existence, tell myself that I'm working hard enough, that I'm not wasting my time, that things, that I'm using my time wisely, I'm not just sitting around being useless, that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's no way to treat something you like doing. you know? And using it as a measuring stick. And end up hitting yourself with that measuring stick. But lately it became something more like that, you know? Taking something I love and enjoy doing and trying to use it to justify my existence. And say that I'm not lazy, say that I'm working hard enough. And you know what? It made things difficult to do. Made it difficult to do the things that I loved. Made me go all out of balance. But you know what did help a lot? It was recognizing a balance of the two. One was taking rest when there was time to take rest. And taking time for that kind of self-enrichment. Working through it. But the one snag was when I got too self-aware. Not self-aware. Too in my own head? I think that's the word for it. Too in my own head about whether I was taking care of myself well enough. Does that make sense? Like trying to short the system or trying to... It's like I got worried that I wasn't in enough control of what was happening. So it's kind of like in those cartoons or those shows where it would have actually worked out perfectly fine had the person not suddenly tried to inject themselves into it or try and control the situation or, tried to over-monitor it. Because there was a point where my body was just like, okay, it's time to move back into the main area that'll help you. And I was thinking to myself, well, what if I haven't rested enough? Come on. There we go. What if I haven't rested enough yet? Or, all that. And then it led to mehness. But you know what? I'm glad it was caught, and I do feel better already, just having moved back to the main area. Keeping things going like that. It's funny, instead of listening to myself, I tried to tell myself what to do. I don't even know if that's the proper way to word it, but that's kind of the feeling I get from it, is like I should have just listened to myself instead of trying to double check myself, critique, I guess you could say that, critique, we gotta do a couple checks first, that kind of, it's hard to describe, but, as I've said before, maybe the words I'm saying kind of circle around the feeling I'm trying to get at. It's like overcorrection. It's something like that. But yeah. Today I washed my house down, and that was pretty satisfying. I got a bucket, and got a brush, got some, soap. The appropriate soap. You can't just be any soap, because, you got to protect the lining of this kind of building. And I scrubbed it all down. Well, not all of it, but a specific wall. You see, when it rains around here, all kinds of debris gets put up against a specific wall because there's a tree on that side. And so today I just went, and now my house is all nice and clean and white again. Nice and shiny. But you know what? I feel a lot better already. You know what else gets me paranoid? Very paranoid. And it's something I want to very much address about myself, and maybe it would do me best just to say it out loud, is that I get attached to even the smallest bit of support very easily, sometimes too easily, and I get worried that if I do anything wrong, or if I'm not interesting enough, or what if I'm not doing what the person came for? I go into like performer mode. How do I keep this person here? And then part of me, it's like two instincts, right? Like part of me learned to try and be more confident, not to seek validation from other people. So half of me is like, you don't need to worry about, whether other people stay or come and go, just as long as, as long as you're doing what you enjoy and you can keep on taking care of your responsibilities and, staying healthy, I'm not like a super adult or anything. I don't have all the right words for it, but that's what I can sort of formulate right now. But then the other part of me that's like, there's a part of me that's going like, you know what, just stop trying to figure people out ahead of time, If they go, they go. And if they like what's going on here, what they're doing, they can make their own choice. And I guess that's the part that kind of leads to a lot of self-criticism, self-loathing, that kind of thing. If I'm not good enough, if I'm not doing the things that brought people in the first place. Oh no, I don't have enough energy. Now this person's gonna go. That kind of thing. Or it's something like that. I'm a little sloppy today, but it's actually something that trying to have more abstract thinking has been helping me with. It's been having the idea, having the feeling, and then trying to do what I can to realize it, adhering to that feeling without having to be so literal or so technical, or grammatical about it, and allowing myself to have the imperfections and trying to explain it. The imperfections and trying to explain it. But yeah, it's trying to figure out like why someone showed up in the first place, what they came for, and then getting down on myself that I can't do that all the time, or I don't have the energy, or I didn't keep it up this go around, or things like that. And it is funny how sometimes, you learn new lessons, sometimes you relearn old ones, and sometimes you realize that the old lessons still have facets that help it to get propped up, help it to get a little more structure, keep them around. And other times you learn that it's just inevitable that sometimes you just gotta relearn stuff or go through it again. But you know what? I feel like each time, at least so far, it gets a little easier because at least I am, but maybe or whoever, is able to, it's like when those experiments that have been done about like language and how a lot of the times people don't form memories until they have learned language or communication skills. Not for everybody, but it's general. Like it's like the majority. I'm pretty sure. I could be ignorant about that, but I'm pretty sure like it's a general thing that for humans, like we don't form memories until we actually learn how to speak. We actually learn how to communicate and form language. And like people who are super duper like They never learn how to talk to anybody. They never learn any communication. Not only that, but they're never communicated with. Like, they're literally deprived of the ability to functionally learn communication and language during a crucial window. They don't form. They like lack certain cognitive functions that are kind of inherent to learning how to communicate. There's like something about that. Oh, excuse me, Numa. I gotta vacuum up these ants. Thank you, baby. You can come back. There you go. You can go right back there if you like. Actually, maybe not. More might appear, and then I'll have to vacuum them up and move you. So just stay here for right now. There you go. But anyway. Anywho. Yeah, so I wonder if it's a bit like that. You know, where in a more metaphorical way, each time you might forget lessons, you might go back to old habits, but slowly over time, you build that language, that communication that helps you to form memories and habits and information that makes it a little smoother. Maybe not less time. That's not guaranteed to be faster or anything, but maybe makes it a little easier to kind of bounce back or pull yourself out of whatever hole or pit, you've ended up in again. There's like high points, low points, but maybe when, like a child, you develop that language, you start to develop memories, you're able to start learning and things kind of become more subconscious. And maybe it's possible that when it comes to taking care of oneself, that there's a language like that, a metaphorical language that slowly gets built up and parts of it become subconscious, and then you learn other habits on top of that kind of stack up, But I wonder if it's possible that you never fall as low as you did before, or maybe if you do fall as low or fall even lower, that you can sort of flash your light up in the darkness and look up and see that there's all kinds of guardrails and escalators and stairs, Maybe not escalators or an elevator, maybe not an elevator, maybe that's too quick for the metaphor, but you kind of get what I mean, right? It's like maybe you end up even lower than you did before, but now there's ladders or rope or things that reach further down that help you to pull upwards. But now that I'm thinking about it metaphorically, if you fall even further down, that you've never fallen that low before, so you haven't built anything to reach that low. But another part of that is, even though you may not have built something to reach that low, ladders and tools and apparatuses for you to try and pull yourself up, maybe the lowest level you were at before is still too high up for you to reach. But what's different is that now you've left all kinds of things for other people to get to use to help reach you. You know what I mean? It's like before, you're at the bottom of your pit and there's nothing there. And now anyone who you could reach out to, ask or cry for help or whatever it might be, they'd have to dangerously jump all the way in and things like that. But now there's all kinds of things built in that at least allow them to get 80% of the way, 75% of the way, and then they help to build the rest, do the rest that helps make it down to you. And you don't have to rely on yourself totally to rescue yourself. You know, sometimes there are people out there who offer support or help. And sometimes, maybe even a lot of times, without even knowing. And sometimes, yeah, maybe they could use those things that you left behind for yourself, and then they help to reinforce them, or it's a whole thing. I'm not experienced enough to really say anything definitive on it, but that's just kind of my opinion on it right now. It's vague, I know, but I feel strongly about that in a way. I know for me, maybe the best thing to do is to try and give an example, which is like when I started working at my job, the kindness shown to me by my coworkers kind of helped to build things down to a certain level that I wasn't able to reach before, Even if they don't know it. It's not like an intervention, or someone busting down your door and saying, I'm gonna help you, just stay calm, that kind of thing, or stay with me, It's as simple as like a simple act of kindness, or, them looking out for you for even just one thing, And something, maybe there's something to those little things that reach down a little further than maybe you're able to build up, or I'm able to build up. I don't know, it's a tough question. It's a tough question. It's a tough mystery. I know I certainly don't have all the answers for that. But, yeah, from here on, I'm not going to hold it too much against myself if I don't accomplish all the YouTube videos that I want to do, or all the things that I want to try. And, as part of that, though, it's not like I can avoid all responsibility. Maybe I shouldn't try and shoot for the stars all the time on something like that. I'm not very good at this whole video thing, but you know what? It's still something that I want to do because I genuinely like it. And this is my way of being able to engage with doing that, I think if I ever wanted to seriously try something at it, I would need like a friend or someone to bounce off of. But doing it solo is rough. I'm definitely that kind of person where I need someone who I'm comfortable with, who can sort of extract personality and things to talk about out of me, someone to bounce off of. But, yeah. Yeah. But yeah. Saying things in too much confidence. And too much, yeah, I guess you could say, getting too lofty. Another thing I'll forgive myself for is at the time, I didn't know my own limitations when it came to things, how much energy I had to spend, how much toll it might take. So I said those things. I was like, I'm going to show off all my old artwork. I'm going to talk about all these game things or things that I'm interested in, or TV shows or what have you. Or not that I'm quitting doing those things, trying to make logs or have fictional journeys, but I'm not going to try and use it as something to try and justify my doing things, as some sort of validation or anything like that, or that it even necessarily has to be public all the time or anything like that. Not going to keep using it as a way to try and impress other people, Just take it back to going to, if it happens, it's because it's something fun that I wanted to do, So, if you're listening to this, don't mind me. If certain video ideas, don't come out for a while, or there are big things in between that are a bit different, and I'll try not to be so, I've learned a lot since I said I wanted to do those things, learned about my strengths and my weaknesses, and the things that help me to stay balanced or feel healthy and things like that. I've learned a lot more about myself since then. So, I do apologize for coming up with all kinds of grand ideas while I was, in a sense, young and haughty. I've learned at least a little more. I've learned more since then. And I'm going to try and balance things out with that little bit more clarity as I go forward. And treat myself with a little more care when it comes to things like that. But yeah, that's, well, let me see. I kind of wanted to look at that comment I got on my previous video. Let's see. Interesting. Interesting. Well, there are a lot of assumptions in a comment like that, but you know what? It's fine. Anywho, yeah, I'm gonna stop recording here and drop, if yeah,